Hi, my name is Octavia. I'm 31 years old. On Christmas Eve, right there in front of 20 guests, my father got to his feet. He stared straight at me and declared, "Pay the rent or leave." The entire room fell quiet. The only sound was the fire popping in the hearth, as if it were ridiculing me. Then my sister Vera lifted her drink, gave a sly grin, and murmured just loud enough for all to catch, "Best of luck with that." The chuckles erupted like flames. Neighbors, relatives, even folks I barely knew piled on. Nobody stood up for me. Nobody even flinched. So I collected my belongings, stepped out into the icy Wisconsin darkness, and closed the door on that place forever. But suppose that wasn't the start. Suppose my relatives had been setting the stage for my departure long before. I once believed Christmas Eve marked the rupture. But in reality, my kin had been fading me out for ages. When I was 17, an acceptance letter for a scholarship arrived. I never laid eyes on it. I discovered much later it had been concealed, stashed away in a container. The application window had closed ages ago. Why? Because going away would mean independence, and independence would strip them of the young woman who handled the cooking, the scrubbing, and held everything together. The nest egg my grandmother contributed to for my benefit. Birthday envelopes with cash, earnings from seasonal work, presents from high school ceremonies, drained dry before I had any clue it was there, family expenses, that's how Dad labeled it, utilities, food runs, minor crises. But the crises always turned out to be Vera's. She received a vehicle at 21, a sleek little sedan tied with a crimson ribbon. I got the public transit timetable pinned to the refrigerator. Dad chuckled when I brought it up. "You've always been so self-reliant," he remarked, like being ignored was some sort of praise. At every gathering, I ended up in the identical seat, the one by the restroom entrance. Guests kept bumping into me all evening, muttering sorry without a second glance. I was the sole person who never really claimed a spot at the feast. Vera positioned herself beside Dad, heart of the gathering, heart of every tale, topping off drinks like she was hosting a fancy affair. Me, I handed around platters, offered courteous grins, and faded into the haze rising from my own serving. Even my identity was up for debate. Octavia turned into Octa on seating tags, O on celebration pastries, and one time Madison, a label that didn't resemble mine at all, on the tag of last year's present. Initially, I chalked it up to sloppiness. Then it hit me. It was intentional, each slip another tiny wipeout. A signal that committing me to memory wasn't worth the bother. And then there were the phrases they adored tossing around. "You're overreacting. You're fortunate we provided shelter. This household isn't a handout operation." But what handout expects the sheltered individual to cover the costs, prepare the food, and fade soundlessly into the shadows? I ought to have seen then that Christmas Eve wasn't an opener. It was a closing act, scripted over years. Exiting that home on Christmas Eve ought to have seemed like catastrophe. Instead, it resembled shedding a burden I hadn't recognized. I hadn't sensed it was fastened to my torso. For the first time in ages, the hush was my own. No steps creaking above, no Vera yelling into her device, no Dad's shows blaring through flimsy partitions, pure stillness. I didn't sort out many items that initial evening, just the essentials, a brush for teeth, fresh sleepwear, the inexpensive light from my space. Even so, I rested deeper on that makeshift bedding, deeper than in a full 10 years. The following dawn, I stirred before the cold season's light. My frame anticipated the familiar pattern. Straighten, prepare drinks, cater, duties nobody acknowledged, done in solitude. But instead, I heated liquid solely for myself and lingered. Flakes danced against the pane, tiny fingers probing the outside. My existence now seemed more compact, yet utterly personal. That opening week, I crafted a fresh cadence. I shifted payments away from my details, terminated recurring fees. I forwarded correspondence and polished every nook of the dwelling, not from duty, but because I craved its gleam. I purchased provisions tailored to my tastes, organized them precisely. No need for markers to stop Vera from swiping them. No need to question why brew capsules disappeared by morning. I initiated minor customs to affirm my presence. Ignite a wick at dusk. Maintain citrus fruits in a dish. Affix a reminder on the cooler that read "Remain." All the while my device vibrated with remorse and directives. Chain messages, unanswered rings, recordings laden with theatrics. I allowed them to accumulate like frost heaps at first light. Each tick of the clock, I held my tongue. My posture firmed up. On the third day, I outputted each remittance to Dad's holdings. I tucked them into a binder marked proofs. For once, the logs weren't his. They were for my clarity, my tomorrow, my take on facts. I perused the kin picture collection one final occasion, altered shots, inaccurate labels, fuzzy borders where I dissolved. This round I selected revoke permission, then shut the window. For the first time they couldn't erase me, because I'd already exited on my terms. The residence started to feel cozy as I rooted myself. The surfaces ceased reverberating. The hush grew genuine. I welcomed nobody. Still, the area never rang hollow. Each evening I murmured prior to the switch flipping, "This belongs to me. This is authentic." And yet I sensed the hush wouldn't endure. In my lineage, quiet signals someone's arming up, primed for the following assault, targeted right at me. On day 3, I checked my finance program by reflex. Row upon row showed housing payment. Tidy, periodic, 4 consecutive years. I selected one, then a dozen others, my gut clenching swiftly. I contacted the lending firm, navigated through anxious melody holds. The agent was cautious, "You're not listed on the profile, and that debt is overdue." 90 days late, she noted. Quiet ensued, no solace. Merely validation gathering within me. I wasn't residing beneath his shelter after all. He was subsisting on my earnings, cycle after cycle. Mortification struck initially, then warmth at my neck. I retrieved every remittance, piled digital files like stones. Document chains anchor what's factual. I grasped that early. Then my inbox chimed. Critical score warning, fresh profile activated. A retail outlet line, my label, my prior location listed. Another warning, furnishings outlet. Identical location, identical label, transactions. High-end footwear, a premium blender, an $800 appliance for drying. 2 days prior to the holiday, somebody acquired a posh styling tool using my info. I secured my score, submitted challenges, examined the delivery info. Addressee, plain as day on the display. Vera Calloway, it wasn't an error, it was pilfering wrapped neatly. Humiliation flickered, then solidified into a sharp, frosty determination. I reached out to each agency, established spoken codes nobody could crack. I drew from a sentence my mom penned solely for me. A tangle formed, gauged, personal, unlike the kin rhythm. Aunt Deborah appeared in the flurry, slipped a data stick into my palm. "Your mom would approve." "You're correct," she stated, then departed. The clip played, Vera's betrothal celebration, devices and bubbly. An unseen voice inquired, "Will Octavia join the bridal party?" Vera scoffed, "She's the crisis reserve, the spare resource." Harland guffawed, drink aloft. "She doesn't object, she's useful." They spoke openly. "Why not?" No opposition arose. I halted on their grins, refined, rehearsed, utterly without regret. In their realm, I was an offspring, I was cash flow. I outputted the dialogue record, fastened it after finance files. Warnings, challenge codes, delivery labels, timestamps aligned firmly. The binder thickened, the manner facts due when secured. The machine whirred like a timer for my resolve. I scheduled a verified dispatch collection with signed confirmations mandatory. I placed 3 plain packets on my surface, 1 apiece. Harland, Denise, Vera, proofs and conditions minus regrets. Christmas Eve wasn't an opener. It was their wrap-up, and it formed my debut address, precise and ready. Next, I'd present them the proofs and repercussions. I created 3 extra copies, sealed the primaries secure. Verified dispatch was set. These were personal deliveries. Identical fractured path. I didn't wrap. I entered like facts in footwear. Kitchen area, Vera browsing, Harland munching, Denise mixing. Nobody welcomed me. Nobody spoke my complete title. I positioned 3 packets on the surface. Examine them, I instructed. Harland grinned slyly. Then the opening sheet wiped the grin away. Finance shifts. 4 years of housing fees never forwarded to the lender. Overdue alerts, score warnings. Deliveries bearing Vera's label. A dialogue where you termed me a crisis reserve. Vera snickered. "You outputted the web. I locked gazes with her. You fabricated me. You expended me." Harland cleared his voice. "Act sensibly. Kin manages kin. Kin doesn't engage in profile hijacking," I replied, firm and chill. "My stipulations. Now, not later. First, repay every cent or we pursue courts. Detailed, exposed. Second, eliminate the lines. Image confirmation and an observer. Third, cease employing my label, location, contact indefinitely. Fourth, any use post today prompts authorities, not dialogue." Denise advanced, limbs extended like grace. I retreated. No embraces from thieves anymore. Harland attempted the familiar mentor tone. "We offered shelter. I offered a document. Guardian pulls from full to nil. You deployed my reserves to fund that shelter," I noted. Grandma's contributions, my earnings, ceremony envelopes vanished. The shelter wasn't above me. I was the support. Vera's head rose. You favor theatrics over payments, Octa. Utter my name, I directed, then utter hijacking. Denise murmured, we faced hardships. Mercy? I told myself. Endorse confirmations and a 30-day return plan. Refuse and the following endorsements are legal declarations. Harlan's mouth tightened. You won't summon law on your dad. I aligned the pile neatly. Complaints submitted, reference codes within. Notices to advisors prepared, postage affixed. I arrived to propose a smoother path. Vera snapped. You'll rue this when none attend. None attended yesterday, I replied. I endured. I left the packets, duplicates, the primaries reside elsewhere. At the exit, Harland attempted a final extension. You depart now, don't return seeking aid. I regarded the man who'd revised my existence. I'm not requesting, I stated. I'm reviewing and the ode some falls due. The season greeted me like a fresh record. Chill, precise. I observed my exhale mist, then dissipate. I motored away. Pigment, not flakes, my boundary was etched to endure, but boundaries draw challenges. Challenges inevitably arrive. The initial call struck before I hit the bend. I ought to have ignored it. I didn't. The device sounded before I rounded the turn. I picked up regardless. Harland was measured, rehearsed. Let's discuss prior to this worsening. I've already submitted, I stated. Reference codes included, a hesitation. Then the familiar intimidation posed as worry. You're isolated now? I'm not, I replied and disconnected. Residents welcomed me with true warmth and a secured entry. I archived the proofs. The anticipation grounded me. On an upper rack, one unmarked container lingered. Annual books, event flyers, a beige packet bearing my title, Chicago University, complete funding. 7 seasons passed. On the reverse, his annotation, she's vital here. The period struck, then glided away like frost off a pane. Underneath, a rose-tinted packet in my mom's script, for my Octavia. Unseal when they question your glow. Her message was straightforward. If they claim you're excessive, recall they lacked capacity to retain you. Tucked behind, a maturity certificate, the foundation of this dwelling. Even absent, she'd granted me a passage forward. I composed one ultimate note, timelines, figures. Demands, restorations, waivers, no interaction clauses included. Hijack submissions and secures confirmed. Endorsed, digitized, dispatched. Resolution, not display. The shared thread stirred then stilled. No regrets, at times quiet approximates remorse. I launched a fresh document, excised her. A reserve and support sessions for females akin to me. We require no amplified tones, merely departures and proofs. Prior to rest, I secured 2 phrases in the entry alcove. Kin isn't possession, limits aren't disloyalty. Lights dimmed, the dwelling sustained its rhythm. Dawn arrived pristine over the planks. Single mug, single workspace, single serene existence. I inscribed 3 terms on a blank sheet. I let you go, not to absolve them. To preserve my completeness. I'm not lingering in fury. I'm simply not lingering. If they revise me, I hold the primaries archived. If they wrap, a barrier and formal notice await. If you've needed to set a boundary with kin, share below. You're not isolated.